Okay, so I wanted to comment on this silly article. There's a lot to say about this in Bloomberg Opinion. So they say Hong Kong is showing symptoms of a failed state. Now, I just want to get out of the way that a lot of people online, when they listen to somebody talk, they try to put them in categories, and or put them on sides, right? And if, of course, that's not good. If I were to be on a side, if you had to put debates into two categories, I would probably be on their side in a sense. But this article, I have a lot of problems with it. So what I'm saying is, please don't put me into some side like I'm arguing in favor of one side or the other. That's not the point. I care about information. I care about good quality of information, and so that's why I'm talking about this. Now, all right, so let's just start with the headline, a failed state. So I don't understand what they mean, like what they expect to happen if it is a failed state. So let's say it is a failed state. Hong Kong, I'm not an expert on what happened with the agreement that they made with China, but it's my understanding is they are scheduled to become part of China eventually. And although China is not honoring their side of the bargain that they promised to, maintain free elections and so forth, the two countries, two systems, one country, two systems, right? So yeah, China's not honoring their side of the bargain, but I think on paper they're to be part of China, if not already, in some sense. So what does it? To me, failed state. Not many countries come to mind, but maybe the dissolution of the Soviet Union, right? That would be a failed state. Or a country that was taken over by a revolution. That could be a failed state. But what exactly would happen? China would just take over more, right? So while I'm pretty anti-China, pretty pro, independent Hong Kong, I just don't understand what they think, like how this could be true. Okay, so then they talk about empty supermarket shelves, rising public distrust. Coronavirus hit city is ticking most of the boxes. So what this writer is trying to do, they're trying to compare this to Venezuela, other countries that have, from Africa and Latin America that have been war-torn by civil war, revolutions, socialist dictators, etc., etc. So they're trying to compare that here. Thing is, it's not Kinshasa or Caracas, blah, 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 blah. But it doesn't look much like a global financial center either. Grocery runs in Asia's financial powerhouse have begun to remind me of shopping in Russia in the chaotic summer of 1998. Reminiscent of Venezuela. We can look here, but if you look at the GDP per capita of Hong Kong, I'm pretty sure it's like $55,000 GDP per cap. But that's the mean average income for a person in Hong Kong. It has nothing to do with these other examples of Venezuela, Russia in 1998, etc. I don't know what was going on in Russia in 1998, to be honest, because that's basically 10 years after the Berlin Wall fell. But there was they did default on their loans in Russia, so they must have had a financial crisis. Let's see here. Okay, so they talk about the SARS outbreak that happened, and it says, crowds are irrational everywhere, and social media hardly helps. Yet the palpable anxiety and coronavirus hit Hong Kong these days suggests worrying levels of distrust. So crowds are irrational everywhere. I kind of agree, but once you're having a run on grocery stores, it's not irrational to stock up. Like it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And given what's going on with coronavirus and what's happened in China, and the fact that there have been a lot of infections in Hong Kong, and a lot of people coming in from China, I don't know if they've closed the border, all the border entry points between Hong Kong and mainland China yet. Last time I checked was like 5 days ago or something, and there were still openings. In any case, so I don't see it's irrational to be stocking up, to be bracing yourself for, especially if you're in Hong Kong, to be bracing yourself for a potential local epidemic, and, protecting yourself. Especially, basically you want to just remain ahead of the curve. Once you want to be first before other people are doing this stuff. You want to beat them. Once it's at this point, it's tough. I don't know if they're gonna start rationing things out or what, but I also don't know how typical this photo is. Just going by what this article says. So let's see, a snapshot of this situation first. Hong Kong is not, at least for now, as grim as parts of mainland China. Yeah. Schools, universities, and museums closed. So then they're trying to connect what's going on here with coronavirus stuff with, all the anti-government protests. The only common thread is, yes, distrust of the government in Hong Kong. But I just see, I just this article makes me cringe. It's just trying to make this look like it's a failing social, they connected with China and now, it's socialism in Hong Kong. That's just not the case. For many reasons, nothing has changed in the economy that dramatically. And also, all the economies of the world, really, they're mixed. It's degrees. You can have heavy in the socialism direction, like Venezuela, North Korea. You could have heavily in the capitalist direction, like Singapore, or how Hong Kong used to be. And China is, in the middle, but towards the heavy government control. But there's a lot of ways in which there's more economic freedom in China. Call it good or bad, I'm just trying to observe. And, for example, the lack of regulations. Like, people are always complaining about lack of environmental regulations in China. So, again, whether you like it or not, that is more economic freedom. So, on the one hand, you have stiff government control of a lot of things, particularly, trade in and out, but manipulation of their currency and trying to manipulate the overall economy, and then subsidizing certain industries like solar and all these kinds of things to try to outcompete on the international marketplace. That's what China does. But in terms of small local businesses, sometimes you have more economic freedom. In any case, it just has nothing to do with what's going on. There is a virus outbreak going on. There are people stocking up. Hong Kong has the experience of SARS, where they had, I think, more people dead from SARS than anywhere else. And so this is their reaction. And to say, oh, it's socialism, I'm a pretty capitalist person, pretty anti-socialism, but this is just a stupid argument. And this was just kind of irritating to read. The comparison with Singapore is unflattering. If official statistics are accurate, the Southeast Asian city currently has more cases than Hong Kong. So somebody mentioned about this in the comments, and I wanted to get to the comments here. And so let's see. So there's some silly comments. This one I did not understand. Hong Kong is showing symptoms of well-financed political sabotage. Well, yes, that is true. Obviously, China is very heavy-handed there. But here's where it gets weird. You've seen this the world over. UK Brexit, US Trump, France Yellow Vest, ... These things aren't just random. Fingers may point to Russia, but the reality is that Russia does what it gets paid to do. Wait, so So the thesis here is, Trump is the puppet of Russia, and Russia is a puppet from someone else. They say right here, the defense billionaires, oil tycoons, shipping. They mean to say magnates. So that's their thesis. So Trump is a puppet to Russia, which is a puppet to the billionaires. Okay, but how does that make sense with UK Brexit? I mean, you'd think that the billionaires would be in favor of strong central power, not decentralization of power. And Britain breaking out of the European Union is an example of decentralization of power. More independence, more. It's not even federalism anymore. They're just independent, right? So it's in the direction of federalism, but it's less centralization of power, more independent, small. I want to say local, but yeah, local to Britain, that they can decide for themselves what to do. So what does that have to do with this stuff? Anyway, paranoid, weird comment here. Okay, so then this comment I liked, and I'm going to wrap it up with this comment and the responses here. This article shows a total misunderstanding of the HK populace's reactions. HK suffered heavily during the SARS epidemic. Almost 50% of the worldwide death toll was registered in HK. I'm going to skip a little. The obvious precautions are healthcare, masks, sanitizers, washing of hands, etc. The next obvious precautions are self-isolation, and this can only be achieved by staying at home with all that entails. Meal preparation, foods, sauces, spices, plus cleaning products, etc., which inevitably results in a run on the supermarket and its stocks. Compare HK with Singapore. HK has a 7 million population and has a common border with China, and had hundreds of thousands of people returning to HK from China after the Chinese New Year. Singapore has half the population, no common border with China, and no massive population returning across its border after Chinese New Year. Hong Kong, as of today, has 27 confirmed cases, whilst Singapore has 40. Why? Because Hong Kong's population has taken it upon itself to protect themselves, which Singapore did not do. One single carrier attended a conference of about 100 persons at the Grand Hyatt. That person infected at least 5 other attendees who spread the virus to South Korea, Thailand, UK, and France. In addition, within Singapore, taxi/tour bus drivers are now victims of the virus. Singapore started its precautions late, and now the populace is reacting with panic buying in the supermarkets. Let's see. My point is, HK is not an example of a failed government. It is an example of a natural human response to a contagion. Pretty much what I was saying. More to the point, and again, like, if you're gonna put me on sides, I'm not here to support China. I'm very pro independent HK, but the article is just stupid. So, more to the point, if Singapore had reacted earlier, then it would not be in a medical situation worse than HK. Okay, so you get the point there. And I'm just going to read this. Simply based on your logic, Japan must be worse than both Singapore and Hong Kong because of that cruise ship. I don't know how that makes sense, because the cruise ship is pretty isolated. You can't really blame Japan for it, right? The cruise ship came and docked at their ports, and Japan has quarantined it. Okay. Actually, there was... so the cruise ship that's in Yokohama, the Diamond Princess... before Yokohama, had stopped in Naha, which is like the capital of the Okinawa prefecture. And most of the people on board had gotten off and, walked around in Naha. And so I'm a little worried that we may see a next wave of infections in Naha. So we'll have to see what's going to happen over the next week or two. So, and worst is the mainland China, blah, 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 natural human response. They could have at least banned people from raising the prices of face masks and other daily necessities. So this person says, just GTFO, get the F out, no true HKers will ever comment like this. So no true Scotsman fallacy. They're just saying... it's like a purity test. You're not enough of a true HKer, and your opinion doesn't matter. Blah blah blah. Natural human response. What's weird is this person is kind of arguing in favor of like what China would do is, ban people from having economic freedom of prices. Now, most people find the idea of increasing prices during an emergency to be repugnant. I understand that reaction, but the reality is, from an economic standpoint, that you want the price to increase by a lot because that will attract. So say the price goes up to 10 times, that will make people conserve them much more, which is good. It will also, because they're selling out even at a price that's 10 times, it will attract a lot of redirection of economic resources towards making masks, right? A lot of capital investment and, other people in kind of neighboring industries. I don't know what that would be. Maybe if you make other kinds of masks that aren't medical, or if you're in you have some kind of industry that makes paper products of some kind, maybe you can redirect towards making the masks. So all that kind of economic redirection towards greater supply, that's going to be bolstered big time if you have higher prices, and also the more conservation of people, right? So, normally masks aren't that expensive, but it makes sense to me that in an emergency they become 10 or 20 times more expensive, so that people take it really seriously. And so also because it's basically a question of, would you rather have only a few masks available at a very high price and you can only afford a few of them, or would you rather just have no masks available? Because if you cap the price at the normal price, you're going to have no masks available. There's zero. I mean, well before the epidemic reaches your locale, masks are sold out. Like they were sold out here in Japan like a week or two ago. Anyway, then the government could ration out masks, and so you get only a certain allotment based on how many people are in your family, and that might make sense, I guess. But it will not increase the price, so it will not necessarily bolster the supply as much. What I was saying, where if you increase the price, it will greatly increase the quantity supplied. Okay, when you increase the price, so the simple rationing is not going to bolster supply nearly as much, I think. Anyway, that's the economics spiel, and but so they're arguing in favor of more economic control and more government involvement, which to me is more strong China. But okay, anyway. As a true HKer who lived through the SARS, so this is a different person now. Yeah, Robin. As a true HKer who lived through the SARS epidemic, I think that the original comment is more constructive than yours. Even though I don't agree with what he says about how the Western world would react, I can see how his comment helps clarify the differences between Singapore and Hong Kong geographically and culturally, and highlights why it isn't such a clear-cut situation. Even though you can tell parts of this column show a slight misunderstanding of various situations, one thing is clear, and it is that Carrie Lam's idiotic mishandling of the situation caused more confusion than support. So I don't remember if I mentioned it, but she did this thing where she said, well, we in the government are not going to use masks because we want to save those masks for the medical professionals. And, everyone hates Carrie Lam, I think, the leader of Hong Kong. For one thing, she's held there by China, basically. I think if it were truly democratic, I think they would have gotten her to step down. I can't remember if she actually asked if she could step down or something, and China said no or something like that. She wanted to step down, maybe, but anyway, so they hate her, so they'll just say, mishandling. But I get what she was doing, because and I think this is a little controversial, but a lot of sources that you find online will tell you that those normal masks are not going to help protect you against this airborne virus, because you're still breathing in. All your air that you're breathing in needs to be filtered. Now, a friend of mine messaged me on Facebook saying that that's not true. It still does protect you to some degree, and that they had read an article about it, but they couldn't find the article. So I'm not sure, but the information that I find online says it really doesn't protect you much. But what it does do is it protects other people from getting the virus if you have it. And particularly because coronaviruses can be asymptomatic, so you can be infectious even without symptoms. If the general populace just starts wearing masks, this is going to probably help to reduce the rate of infection. I mean, the mask physically blocks when you cough or sneeze. It's going to help with that. Now, personally, I think that wearing a mask would help a bit, because it also, for me, I've been trying lately to not touch my face, right? That's definitely something you want to try to do. I find that impossible, because at some point, part of my face becomes itchy, and I just can't stop myself. But if I'm wearing a face mask, then I can, over the mask, scratch my nose or something like that. It stops me from touching my face as much, and at least being more aware of that. So that's another thing to think about. So anyway, this is kind of the mishandling, but there's also about the border control stuff and probably other stuff that I don't even know about. In any case, judging Carrie Lam is not really the point of this video, but I don't have a strong good impression of her. In true Hong Kong style, people have taken upon themselves to protect themselves following what they've learned during the SARS epidemic and from past experiences. I think it's harsh to undermine his status as a true Hong Konger when his comment constructively tries to help highlight why Singapore, which appears similar to Hong Kong, is actually vastly different due to circumstances in history and culture. I can see how you are dissatisfied with the rising prices of face masks, but your comment is hardly constructive to reflect how you are a, quote, we need to stop the purity tests here. True Hong Konger. Instead of insulting each other, support the discussion, and yeah, you get the picture. I haven't read this one yet, actually. You can't even buy one easily unless you want to pay $10 to $20 for one. I'd rather have, the option that I can pay $10 to $20 for one. And they're probably talking about a box that has several. So, it's it's in time of emergency. I would rather have that ability to pay, let's say, $20 for a box of masks. Even if I had to pay $20 for one mask I can use each day, that's better than having none. That's my point. And if you force the price to be normal price, you're gonna have a much harder time getting those masks. And you end up with this situation where, like, when they get the delivery at the supermarket, so people become friends with the staff, and they'll get a text message when the delivery comes in, and they'll go and buy as much as they can. And of course, you're gonna have black markets, and you're gonna have people profiting off the black market. So people will make a business. They'll quit their job and make a business of just being friends with employees at grocery stores and going as soon as the delivery comes and getting the mask. You'll have all that kind of craziness as well. So other countries have banned lifting prices and selling to foreign places. What about HK? Now, I get that for most people, I think most economists are kind of split. A lot of them, maybe half or more, would agree with what I'm saying here. But in terms of ordinary people, they have quite an emotional reaction to the idea of prices going up during emergency. So I get that most people are very against it and get really angry about it. Yeah, what can I say? So you lived through the SARS epidemic. Okay, so it's more kind of addressing this person's comment, and I think that's it for this video. So no specific lesson from the video, but I thought from this article, I just wanted to comment on it and So what do you think of the coronavirus? Are you worried about it in your local area? Personally, I am really worried about Japan because, well, I'm in Japan, and so this Princess Diamond, is it? Diamond Princess ferry, or rather cruise ship. They've got now more than 100 infected people on there. And I just feel like if you can't control the spread of infection in a cruise ship, how are you going to control it in an entire country? I don't know. So I'm a bit worried about that. But let me know what you think in the comments. And thank you for watching, as always.